Before we render out a model or an image of our model, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about the topic of ambient occlusion. Now, when I refer to ambient occlusion, it refers to a sort of a technique that allows you to utilize some of the built-in functionality of the rendering engine to get an image of your model with a baked-in shadow effect on all parts of the geometry. So you've probably seen models that are all solid white but have nice soft shadows in all the creases where the geometry would be. That is a model that has an ambient occlusion pass on it. So what we're going to do is we're going to very quickly set this up so that we can see what the model looks like with an ambient occlusion map. And in the newer versions of Maya, when they added this concept of rendering and layers, you can actually do this fairly quickly. So we can keep everything over here the same in our outliner. And what I'm going to do is select the car group node and go into my render layer and grab this little create new layer and assign selected objects. So when I do that, it assigns just the geometry that I have selected to this render layer. So I actually also want to create a polygon plane because I want to actually see in my render the output I want to see should also include some shadows on the ground where the wheels touch the ground. And if you don't have this, that will sort of reduce the impact that you're trying to achieve. So I will add this to my render layer here, or layer 2 actually. Okay, so now that I have that open, I'll go ahead and click the attribute editor, and I'll grab my layer and I'll call this the AO layer for ambient occlusion. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to go ahead in my presets select occlusion, and you'll see that we have everything has been replaced. All the materials have been placed now with a new what's called a surface shader. And if I click the out color, you can see that this is actually the name of the shader. It's called the Ambient Occlusion shader. And what Maya has done is apply that surface shader to everything in that render layer. So if I go back to my render layer and I go ahead and just run a quick render over here, and now go ahead and open our render settings. I'm going to make sure you're using mental ray, and for now we can leave everything else to the default, and then go ahead and open our render window, and you can see it takes a little bit of time, but what we got here is our first roughed out ambient occlusion pass. And so you can go in and, first of all, I don't like the camera angle, so I'm going to sort of tweak that and then update it. Okay. Now what you can do is you can go into your surface shader, and we can grab the values here. Maybe increase our fall off to 5 and our samples to 32. And everything you do will actually increase the rendering time. But you can see it looks a little cleaner. Maybe bring up some lights and darks. I'll try that again. Anyway. Okay, there's another way in which you can do an ambient occlusion map on your geometry and actually render out a texture map that can be added as a layer to your final PSD. And I'm going to show you how to do that now. So this is sort of a bonus way of using the occlusion shadows that are generated in mental ray to your advantage when you're creating a texture map. So if you select your objects that you want to be mapped, you go into the rendering menu set, go from whatever you were working in to rendering, and then under lighting and shading, there's this batch bake mental ray option. You need your mental ray loaded up, your plugin loaded up. So when you open that, you can see that if you go by the default settings, all this stuff down here is grayed out. But when you choose Use Bake Set Override and you select that, you see that there are some presets here. And in the color mode, you want to change to Occlusion. And what you can do is make some adjustments here, maybe bring your samples up a little bit. I'm going to choose Bake to One Map. And I'm going to bleed my texture seams a little bit. And one thing I want to make sure I do is go back into the model and look at your model. See how I have this hard edge here? I don't actually, that'll read really harshly if I don't fix it in Maya or in the model. So I'm going to grab those edges and on both sides I'm going to do a soften edge operation. And I'm going to look at it again. It's a little blocky on that geo, but that's all right. This is just really meant to just demonstrate what we're looking at. So that's fine. I can keep my material to the default. But when you're ready to go, and I'm going to bump up the rays a little bit, maybe 256. 256 the highest, so maybe I'll do 165. And I'll keep that at 512. And when you're ready, hit convert and close. And make sure you have the objects to bake selected. Alright, and so our result should look something like this. So you can see that we do have some problems here, probably having to do with so many of these being stacked UVs. So if I open my UV texture editor, you can see, and that's okay because what I'm going to do some work on this before I actually slot it in. But I'm happy with it. What I'll go ahead and do is I'll open up Photoshop. In Photoshop, you want to go to your render data folder in your projects directory, mental ray, light map, and then open up the file. It should be just called baked if you hadn't renamed it. Now what you can do is you can go in and edit this file. Say you want to clean up this area. Well, you could go in and just with your brush, maybe you want to soften your edge in your brush. And just, very quickly do maybe an outer stroke here. And then when you're ready, go in and open your car texture. And I think that my texture is at 1024. So what I would do is double the size here. Oh, never mind. It already is. And so what I can do is just move this in. If I hold down Shift, it should just drop it in right in place. And I can not save that, that's fine. And now when you go to your layers, you can see that I have this, and I can just drop it in behind my outlines layer here. And if I do like a layer transition to like a overlay is not. Could do a multiply. That works pretty well. And if I go ahead and quickly save this out, I'll just call this car color bake. And now I'll bring back into Maya, and I select my object, and I assign my existing material. Now I want to change to car color baked. You can see that some of the noise that may not be desirable comes through because we haven't actually done any, taken the blur tool or do anything. But you could now see that those shadows that were part of our ambient occlusion map are actually here in our texture, and it gives the feel of more realistic light interaction. So that's how you would do that. Add ambient occlusion to your texture.